Actually, the last member of the dream team is Dr. Glenda Humiston, who started her job probably within a few days of Sally Rocky starting her job. Glenda, as you probably all know, is the Vice President for the University of Agriculture Division of Agriculture and Natural Resources. She comes to us from a prior position as California State Director of USDA Rural Development. She got her PhD at UC Berkeley. And I looked over all of her accomplishments and her career trajectory over online, and it was sort of mind-boggling. So instead of summarizing all the things and specialties she has, I'll just give you the title of her PhD, which I think tells a lot, which is Sustainable Agriculture as U.S. Farm Policy, Opportunities and Threats to Reform. And that tells you a lot about where she's coming from, and she'll tell you the rest.
Well, thank you, Norm. I appreciate that. It's really great to be here today. That's okay. Aunt Palmy's right. This thing is a very heavy microphone, isn't it? So the disadvantage and advantage of being the last speaker after three folks like this is you might think all the topics have been covered. In fact, it was really interesting when I was thinking about the topics to go into today, and you know, we've heard climate change, obviously, check. Pests, soil health, water efficiency, farmer productivity, food systems, nutrition, breeding programs, new crops, new varieties, extension, knowledge transfer, more. I mean, you might think that pretty thoroughly covers the research opportunities. But the good news is that it doesn't completely, because I have some new things. So I want to actually get into some perhaps a little bit non-traditional research related to ag, and yet I feel this is really, really crucial. And the first one I'd offer up of four is ecosystem services. Increasingly in today's society, agriculture comes under a lot of attacks, and it's pretty easy to attack, really, because most of the public out there doesn't understand it very well. All they see is that almonds are being shipped overseas, and ag is using 40% of the water, although the media likes to call it 80%. There's GMOs, there's this, there's that, the other. It's really easy. And what often gets overlooked in that discussion is the fact that agriculture and related working landscapes activities are providing an enormous amount of ecosystem services for which they get virtually no credit whatsoever. And this is a travesty that is long overdue for some research attention. Now, that's not to say there aren't folks looking at it. People are. But I would urge particularly those of you that maybe aren't looking for that next new exciting cultivar, and some of the folks that are outside of the ag school here, to really think about the role you can play on that. How can society value ecosystem services? What does that mean? How do you educate the public on that? Where does it fit into economic development and all that complexity of human environmental interactions? There's a lot of opportunity for research in that field. Related to that a little bit, as ag is moving forward, 9 billion people in a rapidly urbanizing world, and a lot of that urbanizing is going to be paving over prime farmland. And farmland is being lost for a variety of reasons. Excess salinity, damage, erosion. The bottom line is, we probably will not have enough great soil out there in places with the appropriate climate and water, etc., to feed the 9 billion people. So a really new emerging field right now is controlled environment agriculture. And I think this is one that deserves a lot of attention and research, and we're seeing some very exciting things. I was looking at a facility, not in Japan, but online. I was looking at a facility that is in Japan that used to be a factory that manufactured computer chips. Fujitsu, I think the company was. And they've converted that facility, that sterile facility, into producing lettuce. They're producing about 5,000 head of lettuce today. 2 or 3 people are running the whole thing. It is wired to the nth degree. Every single thing related to that lettuce is managed by computer systems. You don't have to worry about pest and disease and weather and all this other stuff. It's all controlled environment. And what's amazing is that particular lettuce, because they can control it so heavily, I'm going to forget which exact, which it was, potassium, sulfur, something. It's lower in that than normal lettuce, so it doesn't have that little bit of bitter taste, which makes it very popular for the kids. And it's selling in Japan for $2 a head a premium on top of normal lettuce. So controlled environment ag, we've got folks here in LA, Food Policy Council, that have actually been looking at this. We've got folks all over this state and the nation and elsewhere really looking at it. And I think it's something that offers a lot of opportunity, particularly for those of you in the engineering school and some of the other systems, computer sciences, to start teaming up with your ag colleagues. Another area related to that is just ag technology in general. This is crucial, and I do hope you guys are reaching out to some of your engineering and innovator type, tool type people. I saw a slide not too long ago that shows results of some polling and research surveys that had been done down in Mexico and in Latin America on what were the young people down there thinking about what they were going to do in the future. And I got to tell you, the stat is pretty amazing. Basically, when you look at recent years and years going into the future, it is like this, the willingness of young people from Latin America to go into farm working. And the farmers in Mexico are already feeling this. Farmers in California are feeling it. Farmers everywhere are feeling it. And the reality is, I don't think we as a people want to assume that we can always count on others, them from somewhere else, to come here and do our back-breaking labor. Yes, I realize there's going to be a lot of cultural upheaval when that back-breaking labor is no longer available to folks that have maybe a 3rd or 4th grade education. We've got to find other solutions to that issue. But we are going to have to find new ways to plant and manage and take care of and nurture and harvest our crops if we are going to feed those 9 billion people. And some of it's going to rely on technology, some of it's going to rely on cultivars and new ways to do ag. I was up at the Kearney Research Station a couple weeks ago, and in the tour of that, one of the things they showed us that kind of blew many of us away was a new cultivar they were looking at that actually allows grapes to dry on the vine into raisins. And then you literally go through with the machine and harvest them. When that is actually released into the public, and it's probably not that far away, within a year or two, that is going to overnight reduce the demand for 30 to 40,000 farm workers in that 3-4 month period of raisin harvest and raisin drying. Because right now most of that's done by hand. Has to be. So that kind of thing's out there, and it's something we're really going to have to look at. And it's not just the in-the-field stuff either. It's farm to fork in processing and packaging and distribution and all those activities. As labor becomes tougher, we've got to find ways to make those work. But at the same time, if we do have these new cultivars and we are trying to feed that extra people, there are going to be more jobs, particularly in that farm to fork. And for the social scientists and the economic development people out there, that's where you could play a really, really huge role in helping make that function a whole lot better. And then last, but certainly not last really, but last of 4 items today, because that's all Norm gave us, 2 to 4, so I'm taking my 4, is some policy issues and some economics. And for the 2 or 3 economists in the audience that heard me talk to this faculty today, you'll find this ironic, but there really is a great need for better economic understanding of what is going on out there. And I don't mean the kind of modeling that I was complaining about earlier, where you get so enamored of your little models that you forget reality. I'm talking about really understanding what is going on out in the world. So, for example, the reason I was kind of a little bit bad-mouthing economist a few hours ago, was a statement that was in a report that came from our own University of California Academic Senate to the effect of, when they were looking at our Division of Ag and Natural Resources, they had a paragraph in a recent report that more or less said, since agriculture is less than, or about 2% of the state's GDP, why are we putting so many resources into it? Hopefully you're appalled. I just about came out unglued when I read that. Yeah, you know something? If you look at the raw farm gate value of ag in this state, about $50 billion, give or take, yeah, it's about 2% of the state's GDP. But for God's sakes, people, you need tractors and seed and people and all kinds of equipment and facilities and land and all the other stuff that is money being spent, money going through the system. We actually, as part of the State Economics Summit, which is going to be right next door in Ontario next week, for those of you interested, when the very first State Economics Summit happened, this is the third one that'll be in next week, it was held up in San Jose in 2012, and a whole day talking about the state's economy. 500 of some of the best and brightest people from all over the state, a wide array of stakeholder groups. At the end of the day, I was so frustrated. You would have thought the economy of California was living on a barren rock in outer space. Not a single word about ag and the resources related to working landscapes and natural systems and ecosystems. I mean, just nothing. We spent the day listening to infrastructure and workforce and finance and housing and capital. Well, guess what? All of those folks involved in all of those sectors eat. And they rely on ecosystem services. So it's really crucial that we start getting this message out. I have to tell you, I could not get great data that helped me with my messaging from UC, because a lot of the UC studies at the time, this was a few years ago, and we're going to get it better now, but a few years ago, a lot of the studies were so narrowly focused, I couldn't get a really big picture number on what the real number was. I had to actually go to the community colleges Center for Excellence, which is a really outstanding research arm of the statewide community college system in their chancellor's office, who really specializes in studying NAICS codes and labor trends and jobs and the future, and they really are trying to forecast into the future where the jobs are, where they're going, so that they can keep their curriculum development at least even, if not ahead of that curve. And so I took to them, so backing up after that first economic summit, myself and several others went out and lobbied all over this state to get chartered for the next state economic summit a new action team on working landscapes. And I took that to this Center for Excellence and said, listen, I need to know what are the numbers we're talking about? And working landscapes is ag and fisheries and forestry and mining and recreation and bioenergy and probably a few other things I'm forgetting. What really is the number we're looking at for working landscapes in California? And what they brought back to me was over 1.2 million jobs in 2013. This is 2013 data. Direct sales, and frankly, I think this number is woefully low because they really did not count much in the way of recreation. And you all know, many of you know, how important agro-tourism, ecotourism, recreation, and rural landscapes is. They almost didn't count it at all. And even without that, $318 billion in direct sales. So you put a little conservative multiplier on that, and you're talking about $1 trillion of the state's economy, i.e. about half of the state's economy related to working landscapes. Now that really makes you look at them a lot differently, doesn't it? Because the problem we had in 2012 at that first economic summit, and for you economists and you social scientists and political scientists and all the rest of you out there, you all know it's how you carve up the numbers. So they had the pie chart of the state's economy. It's about $2 trillion roughly, give or take. manufacturing, wholesale, transportation, service, entertainment, and a couple other things like that. And that was the whole thing. And we were in there, but we were hidden behind all those other labels. So you couldn't tease ag out. You couldn't tease out working landscapes. So people they think it doesn't exist. They think it has nothing to do with the state's economy. So this kind of messaging is really crucial, not only to help policymakers make good decisions, but for those of you who are trying to get funding for your research, this is really important because as you heard earlier, particularly from Sally, if you look at the amount of funding in the last decade or so for, say, NSF and NIH, it's been on a pretty good trajectory. And at the same time, funding for ag research has been flat at best. That's why the President's Council on Science and Technology, in a report a year or two ago, recommended that ag research alone needed at least an additional several $100 million a year investment. And that's just ag. That's not even ecosystem services and some of the other things I'm talking about. So I guess my point is I really want all of you in the audience, and I think Norm and all of you that help make this CAFÉ thing come about are really on the right track when you're trying to do this cross-disciplinary, these multi-knowledge type-based teams. You're on the right track because these kind of things I just mentioned, if they don't get new knowledge and new research and get messaging out to the public, all the new cultivars in the world are not going to feed 9 billion people. We've got to have both types of science going on simultaneously and working together. The good news is when you look at that kind of bigger picture and more innovative interdisciplinary kind of science, you've opened up a whole lot of new funding sources. You know, all the humanities and the social sciences. Many of the foundations nowadays are really looking for multidisciplinary type research rather than single focus. We at University of California, I can tell you, Ag and Natural Resource, our division, that's what we're looking for increasingly. Yeah, we still have we want some focus on a new cultivar or a new, water efficiency technique or something like that. We want that too. But we increasingly want these solutions to these more complex problems that all too often haven't been looked at. So Norm, I tried to help you out. I think I was a little under 15 there. Thanks.